Okay, we're on.
All right. Oh, we haven't done degenerate discussions in a while.
In a very long time. Which is killing because this is literally like the homepage of our YouTube page. It's us
Yeah.
in the parking lot together.
I know, right? But we found a good topic. We're going to be discussing school. And not going to lie, I thought for this first episode, kind of ease us into it, we'd kind of discuss the merits and downfalls of high school before we get into college because that's just going to send us in a spiral. What do you guys
I'll
think?
send you two in a spiral.
Yeah, but you'll understand it. Like, what do
Oh,
you
I
think?
understand the spiral. I'm just saying I have less to add to it.
Oh yeah, but I thought high school would be a good thing to start with, right? Agreed.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Okay, then yeah, let's start with some high school things and let's start class. Ready for it?
I was ready for it, and then what I was working on got a little bit delayed. So yeah, it'll come soon enough.
Nah. Well, I was gonna say, let's get started. We're your hosts, Archimage,
Shadow Fox.
And Zed.
and let's dive into our tremendously flawed education system. Okay, so like one thing, like because college we're gonna spend a lot of time on, but going into high school, I actually don't think having a high school degree is a bad thing. I actually think it's good because like it is kind of considered the minimum of education you should have, but you can get most jobs with a high school degree, and it shows you're not a quitter in a way.
Yeah, getting your GED is necessary.
Yeah. Like I'd say a high school degree is fairly good, though. I do admit, while I think it's good for either GED or high school, I do think that some of the things that are taught can be a little, well, useless. And I don't mean some of the new woke
Some
stuff.
of the things that are taught are useless.
Well, okay, so this is where I kind of want to go into teaching. Is like what useless to whom it may concern. Like, for instance, I learned calculus in high school. Now, I'm gonna ask the two of you: do you two ever use calculus?
No.
Once.
Yeah. Okay. See, I do use some calculus and mathematics, but you guys know,
You
I
do it
have
for
a lot
side
of different
project.
hobbies.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
You do it for
But the
side
thing is,
project. It's
yeah,
not
for
for
side
your job.
project.
I
Not for my job.
my once was actually for my job.
Okay. Definitely tell us about that later when, not on this where we
No,
expose your
I
job.
can actually explain now. It was I would someone did not believe the formula that our software was using was valid, and they wanted to know how it got to the answer, the result. So I basically had to do the mathematical formula for it. Now, granted, it was more of a financial formula, but the basic of that financial formula was rooted in calculus.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, basically I used the formula which was a financial formula, but to, go through the calculation, you have to use calculus because I think it's a continuous number counting thing, which is all calculus if memory serves correctly.
I believe that's correct.
Where I can't remember the name of the symbol, where basically you have to it has that strange symbol at the beginning, and it has the number
Okay,
that you
most
count
of
to.
calculus is strange symbols. Like,
Yeah.
you got to give me more than that.
Yeah, I don't remember the names of the symbols off the top of my head right now. I remember
Like,
how I
wh-
used
like,
them. I just couldn't remember.
What did the symbol look like? Give me that at least.
A line with a slight curve at the top and curve at the bottom, where you will have an integer value at the top and I believe an integer value at the bottom, and it will be followed by I think a formula that you are using if memory serves correctly. Again,
Wait,
it was
do
like
you mean like an equal sign with a squiggly line above it, or
No. It was let me.
because that's equivalent to, and I'm like that doesn't sound right. But
But you can see it's been a long time since I used it.
yeah, no, but that's my thing is like, before we get into
Integral. It was an integral sign.
Oh, that's how you describe an integral sign.
I like how Google was able. I just typed in calculus symbol and the first one was integral. I'm like, that was it.
Yes, that's like the most common symbol throughout all of. Well, that's actually Cal 2 more of. You don't do a lot of. Okay, squiggly line. Why not just say look like an inverted S or something? That would make a squiggly. Okay.
No, wait a minute. We get. Let me get that on the whiteboard.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna have a long talk about your definitions of what symbols look like later on, but to get to the point that I was trying to make is that, one of the big things in schools is that because I do agree that people should have high school or a GED, but is it to the point where you kind of need to have it actually be useful? Because like Zed, in your case, I think it would have been completely pointless for you to learn calculus in high school. Would you agree?
Yes. I use math with my job, but I do not use calculus level anything.
Yeah, no, you need math, but that's kind of my point is that it needs to be kind of what people could actually use for the real world versus, what they could theoretically use. Because like, again, I use calculus, but it's for side projects, it's not for my job. And even when I was in my field, I didn't use calculus. Like, I'm not even going to lie about that. They don't use that. Calculus is useful to understand what we're doing, but they don't often use it. But that's the thing is, like, where do we need to draw the line on learning what we need to learn and definition of what needs to be learned? Because really,
It's a squiggly line, okay?
okay, it is not a squiggly line.
Zed, take a look at that. What does that look like?
I'm not gonna lie. For some reason, that looked like a really dumb music note.
It does look like
That
kind of
would
like a
be
symbol,
more
a musical
adequate.
symbol.
That would actually be more adequate. If you'd said a stretched out S or a strange stretched out music symbol, that would have given more of a clue than an integral. Okay. You're going to kill me with it. Like, I can't have you mention, like, calculus symbols anymore, because clearly you're going to, like, give me an aneurysm over this. This is the every bird's a chicken discussion all over again.
I mean, it does look like a music note type deal, but
Yes, I would accept a lot more than a squiggly line.
I mean, it's not a straight line. It's clearly curved at the top and curved at the bottom, so it's definitely squiggly in some way.
No! I am not giving you that. You could have at least said vertical. Okay. Let's again, getting back to the point.
Look, I know my leering. I'm giving you good leering here, Alchemist.
Didn't you mean to say you're godding me good leering?
Oh yeah. There we go. You apparently you pass Ingress. Clearly, you can tell we went through American education over here.
Very clearly. My point is that, okay, so the point I was trying to make is I've always thought that one of the big flaws with our education system, even just going in basics in high school, is that the more generic thing is kind of where it loses it, because not everyone's the same. Not everyone is going to go in and use calculus and use other things. So it's kind of meaningless from the learn stuff, but then people who do want to use that, you would kind of like to teach them that. So like, what's the balance of giving people skills that they actually need? I think is where I'm going with this.
Well, one of the big problems, and since we're just sticking with high school, is they treat high school as a Swiss Army knives of what they teach you, where they just teach you everything, and then they expect you to go into college and be honing in on hyper specific what you want to focus on. And the problem with that is, and that's fine, I would argue that's fine, that's all well and good from elementary to, I want to say, what would be people's sophomore year of high school. But I want to say everything after sophomore, which would be junior and senior year. I think they should honestly, if they're gonna be teaching you anything those 2 years, it shouldn't be like AP courses, advanced placement courses, and it shouldn't be like it should only be AP courses if you're going into college and you're going to specifically be doing something along those subjects. Like if I'm going into college for nursing degree, me taking AP biology is a good idea because that way I can avoid having to do it in college, or at least I can get some of the credit out the way.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Well, that was the same reason I took calculus in high school.
exactly. So, but then at the same time, if I'm even like I don't know what I'm going to do, or I don't even know if I'm going to go to college, it serves no purpose to do AP courses. The better thing for me to do would be if they had a actual not I don't want to say business class because that implies you're going to go into accounting or finances or something. It would be better if they just have a life studies class where they teach you things that you will need to know just to function out of high school, such as writing a check, how interest rates work,
Probably nowadays how credit works.
how credit work. That's another good thing. How do credit cards and credit work? What's his credit score and why do you need it, or why don't you need it? What's a mortgage? What's a mortgage rate? Just basic stuff. And I know for a lot of people this may seem like basic stuff, but for someone who is still in high school, this is not known stuff.
Well, I argue that because I've seen a lot of especially because people who are adults. I mean,
They don't
one of
know
the big
what this
things is
is.
they get into debt and everything because they never really had any proper financial training.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think that's a good point. I think a financial class, like teaching you about finances, dangers of credit, saving up, and everything, could would be actually beneficial, and that would be something that literally everyone should learn. And I think that's kind of the point I was trying to get to in high school is that you should have, first of all, it should teach you skills that you would definitely use, but also does it need to be more do we need to have some kind of class that actually starts to really talk to students about what they want to do when they get out of high school so that they can see what they want to focus on during high school? Because one of the things is high school does not prepare you for college,
No.
at all. A lot of people go to college and they think it's just like high school. So someone's got to make them go to class or anything. And, when they get there and they realize, oh, I don't have to show up to class.
You don't have to do
What do
the
they do?
homework.
They don't show up to class and
You don't
they
have to.
waste money and everything else.
I will argue it goes even a step further of they go out their way to not teach you valuable stuff that is
Yeah.
necessary for for college. Like Zed, because you'll probably remember this better than we will. When you were in a senior doing English class, your senior year
Yeah.
doing English, what did they focus on the most in terms of studying? Oh, classwork.
If I'm remembering right, nothing. Senior year felt the exact same as every other year.
Then what did they focus on the previous years?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about things like how to write an essay or
Yes.
other topics like that they went over many other times. We learned nothing new. It was all continue, copy, paste, go through a textbook, read something, write some paper on God knows what.
See, that's a slightly better because that's the problem is a lot because my English teacher for senior year, I remember he went over this in detail because he was an English major and he was like, okay, I don't want you guys to fall for the same pitfall. You're going to, if you learn one thing from my class, you're going to learn how to write a proper paper. So you're going to have introduction, body, conclusion. You're going to learn that
Yeah.
format, you're going to get it right, and you're going to have that hammer into your head. Why? Because every one of your college classes is going to expect papers from you, and they're going to expect that format of introduction, body, conclusion. And if you can't do
Yeah.
that, you're going to fail college very quickly. And he's like, the problem is, if you go into like an AP English class or you go into English class at any of these other schools, they try to make you learn how to read and get the symbolism behind like Shakespeare or something. And he's
I
like,
will say this: my English classes towards the end, I think, felt a lot more like that compared to writing papers.
which is how it should be. And it's because he would explain to me, if you do AP English, you will it'll basically just teach you how to understand the symbolism and composition behind the book. And he's like, that's well and good, but they expect to teach you that stuff in college. What they don't want to try to teach you is how to write a paper. So it's like, you teach people how to do the symbolism, but not how to write the paper. So then they learn the opposite, and they get into college and they start failing because they can't write the paper, even though they understand the symbolism that the teacher is trying to make them write a paper over.
Yeah, and writing a paper is actually a very good life skill because you want to put together proposals, you want people to listen to you. There's a certain way to do things, and you need to be able to, and it actually helps with, explaining things because you need to be able to deliver information in a clear and cohesive way. And you can't really do that if you have never learned to write a paper properly and are just like scrambling about saying this, and this happened. Oh, by the way, this was the point, and this, like, it can't be this misjointed illogical mess. It has to be clear and concise, and there is a procedure to that. There is a method to it that they are not going to teach you in college, straight up. Like,
Well,
they just
now you
expect
can
more.
because of ChatGPT and Gemini and all the other AI programs. They technically can get away with that now. So
Yeah, but like that's also a problem is that the Chat GPT thing, because like Shadow R Fox and I have mentioned that we've like seen people who we've started reading more because we've seen that the rates for people's ability to read just heavily decline to the point where it's actually embarrassing. Uh, there was one teacher who actually said that she was trying to get her student to read, and the student looked at her and said, "Why do I need to learn to read? I can just get Chat GPT to read it for me."
yeah,
And it's like, okay, well, first of all, if I had said that, my dad would have looked at me and said, "So you're not a complete idiot." Like, but that's the thing is, and the teacher said she didn't have a good answer. I think that's also a problem because the teacher literally should have looked and said, okay, you do know ChatGPT is a tool, and you have to be smart enough and able to read enough to actually know what to tell it to do, because otherwise it can completely screw you up.
yes.
Like, that's the thing. It's not perfect. And we've seen that. I mean, you tried to do a review of a book recently, Shadow R Fox, and it
So
told you there were no female characters in it.
so funny enough, yeah, that was ChatGPT, and funny enough, I did retry it again, and it does appear like they have fixed it better than what it once was. It still made a mistake that I called it out on, but then after I called it out on it, it didn't make the mistake again, and it started referencing the PDF version of the book I uploaded.
Yeah, but you see, that's also the point is you have to be intelligent enough to be able to actually call out these mistakes.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just going to keep doing it.
I had already read the material. And I guess I can give pre-frame. Basically, I was reading Journey to the West for one of the other podcasts that we're going to be doing eventually. Eventually, put a time frame on that one. And I was trying to get a summary of each chapter so I could remember what I have read and kind of give a refresh to myself. And one of the thing I had did was I had read a chapter very recently where a female character had showed up, and it was like a tree spirit. It was basically they were reciting poetry to the Tripitara, the monk on the journey to the west. And I was trying to remember what the name of the tree spirit was. So I basically had it summarize the chapters around that tree spirit because I couldn't even remember which chapter it was from, and it didn't even list it. So eventually I had to call it out on it and say, look, there's a chapter where they do a whole chapter about talking to tree spirit, and one of them have a female character in it. I'm trying to get that name. And they was like, oh yes, this was the name. But it didn't, it just completely skipped the chapter. It basically pulled the chapters from the internet, which was not from the version of the book I was reading, the one I uploaded to it. So it was like, if I didn't read the book, if I didn't understand the context, if I didn't know what I was looking for and where and that it was in the book, ChatGPT would have just lied to me and gave me not only the wrong chapter, but the wrong information for the chapter.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's the point. Is like you want to be able, you need to be able to read to understand these things because like technology is not infallible. Like it makes mistakes because it's technology, but also just so you don't seem like an idiot. I'm sorry, but it's pretty sad. People say, "Oh, I can just get Chat GPT to read it to me." That's the equivalent of having to go up to a first grader and say, "Hey, can you read this to me because I'm stupid?"
I don't want to think
I'm
about.
sorry, but that's what it is. I mean, yeah, kids, if any kids are listening to this, yeah, if you can't read, you're going to be considered stupid. And your teachers are afraid to tell you that because the parents are going to get all butthurt about it. But yeah, you're going to be considered an idiot if you can't read. I'm sorry, that's just how it is.
No, reading is a very valuable skill, and I don't know why we
Like, that's the thing. Like, with skills you should learn in high school, reading, well, before high school, but reading's definitely a skill you should, like, we should be able to agree on some universal things that you need, and reading should be number one. And then mathematics, I think you need at least basic mathematics.
You
Like,
know
you
how
should
to
know
add,
how to add and
subtract, divide, and
subtract.
multiply. You can pretty much get by with just that
yes.
Yeah,
for most things.
for most things, yeah. Like, honestly, you could probably go your whole life without using differential equations or even algebra. I'm not even going to pretend with that. I mean, maybe if you want to go into tax formation, but even with that, I doubt
No,
taxes use those.
it. I would say like I had to do it because I went into programming, but even with
As someone who has family members that are accountants, I'm pretty sure they don't use more than maybe the standard basic.
Yeah,
Excel
because
and other auditing software can do that for you nowadays. So
yeah, and even then, the formulas they use are fairly simplistic in that. Because I took a couple accounting courses, they really were just adding and subtracting, and then knowing what data to add together. So, like, you need to know medians, means, and things like that. But that's all pretty
and,
basic.
and remember Archimage, I told you I had to show the work and the mathematical. That's the only reason I had to do calculus at my job is I had to show the mathematical proof behind essentially a financial equation. So it wasn't hard for me because I just looked up online, what's the formula and what's the mathematical logic behind it, and then I just basically plugged the numbers in I just did a random example and I plugged the number into the integral into the function, showing this is how you do it, this is the logic behind it. I came to the same solution the software came to.
Yeah.
But I had to do that for an auditor, and that's kind of and that wasn't like a new auditor. That was a senior auditor, someone who was much older than me. I guess you
Yeah.
would call it a boomer by everyone else's standard.
No, I don't even try to figure out the generations anymore. But eh, but yeah, so I guess the main point is, like, with high school should, like, well, I guess school before high school, because I do think it'd be good to have a GED or at least a high school equivalency degree, unless you want to go into something specialized for college or later. But to have that general, you should have some basic general knowledges like basic math, reading, and, like you said, a financial course, so you actually know how to properly spend money, what things cost, and to not think that a credit card basically means everything's free, which I am sad to say a lot of people do. And it's like you have to pay for that eventually, and there's okay, let's not get into that. But then going with the rest, like, that's the thing, is that maybe it needs to on some level kind of depend on the individual person and what they really want to do with their lives. But I guess you could argue that that's putting pressure on people who, are just in high school and are basically, dumb teenagers to figure out what they want to do with their entire life.
So I guess that's another problem I have is are we going to are we going to keep calling high schoolers dumb teenagers or are they adults? Because let's face it, by the time they hit the senior year, they're gonna be turning 18. They're gonna be adults in the eyes of the law.
That's
So
true.
it's like, yeah, I know most people most adults don't even know what they want to do with their life. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you kind of do need to know a general direction of what you want to do. That's why I again said life studies, because I figure not only would it teach the basics such as credit and mortgage and basic everyday life stuff, insurance and what and deductible and things like that, but it will also teach. Maybe it will also encourage. Okay, well, you're gonna have to get a job, because at the age of, I believe this is across the country, at the age of 26, that's when you can't be on your parents' health insurance anymore. You gotta be on your own health insurance. um
Yes.
and it's now granted, I believe legally the health insurance that you were previously on have to offer you the same deal, so you can pay it and get onto the same plan, but they do a lot of scummy things so they don't have to do that. And it it would be, so like encouraging people, like, look, you're gonna have to get a job. And one of the thing I've seen school do that I don't like, and not just school, I've seen society do as a whole in America. I don't know, maybe someone from Europe can chime in the comments and talk if it's the same up there. But one thing I've seen a lot of, and Zed, chime in if they changed this since me and Archimage was in high school. They hugely encourage that you do high school, graduate high school, go straight into college. They don't
Yeah.
encourage you to get
Yeah.
a job. They don't encourage you
No.
to get like a trade skill, like, to do. They almost discourage doing work with your hand, like being a plumber, an electrician, a
Oh yeah,
carpenter.
that's the thing. Society straight up belittles those professions.
Which is killing, because those are the professions that currently can't be replaced directly with AI any more so than they already have been, because while you can make a chair in a factory, so you don't need a carpenter, you can't make ChatGPT come down into your house and change your plumbing or rewire your house. You still gotta get an electrician or a plumber to do those things.
Yeah, like, and Chat GPT can't build a house. They can't, fix, they can't fix sewage. Like, there's a lot. Our entire infrastructure is dependent on blue collar manual labor, and that's the thing. It really can't be replaced by Chat GPT. And I think a big problem is that we do look down on those jobs, even though they literally keep our entire way of life going. Like, without people who work on power lines and things, you can tell Chat GPT all day long that there's no electricity, but without electricity, Chat GPT doesn't work, period. So,
And internet.
yeah, and internet. And so there is this thing of, like, you know, kind of almost an entitlement that you shouldn't have to work with your hands. And then, of course, a big problem nowadays is that, so many people want to be influencers and just make content. You
Possible
found the
solution.
time.
I'm just putting out there, possible solution.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm going to
God.
ignore that.
Get the robots in the field. I'm just gonna throw that back out there, okay? Just
Like, okay, I'm gonna ignore that. Is that a lot of people like want to become influencers nowadays? And well, here's the thing: like, to all influencers out there, and like, there's influencers that I like, and I'm sure that the two of you like. But let's be honest: if every influencer disappeared off the face of the planet tomorrow, the world would go on pretty well. Like, I'm sorry.
they would just find other things to watch.
Yeah, they just find other things to watch. Like, influencers in the long scheme of things are not that important. However, if we lost electricians, plumbers, and everything else, we're kind of screwed.
So I guess that's one of the other problems, is because school has, and society as a whole, have made it essentially, and again, Europeans chime in if they make you guys do this same thing, if they use the same mentality of go to school, graduate high school, go straight to college, and then you'll get a job instantly. Because,
Yeah.
because of that, the job market has been flooded with people who have graduated and have a bachelor degree. So now all of these high position job that originally was left unfulfilled because they didn't have enough college graduate people to fulfill them, you got a surplus of it now. You have too many college level student graduating, and some of them in positions that really they shouldn't even get a degree in, because there's no work opportunities there. But we'll get into that a whole nother time. That's a whole nother discussion by itself.
Oh yeah.
Um,
No.
but just to get into stay on topic, the problem is you've encouraged multiple generations of people to not pursue any other work experience and go straight into college. And then when they get out of college, they expect work to be handed to them, but jobs aren't looking for college grads anymore. They're looking for people who have work experience. Why? So they don't have to, because training a graduate students may take a month of my time, a month of my time, or a month of them not being able to do the work like a regular employee. Training someone who already had this job for like several years from another company and they're just coming to my company to do it will only take a week, because all I gotta do is train them how to use the system and to
Yeah.
teach them protocol. Everything else they already know how to do on a experience based level.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes them much more attractive. So again, we see the value of hands-on work over, a degree. So it's almost it's back to the old thing about doing something in theory versus doing something practically. You're always going to want to do if you have to choose between the two, you're going to choose someone who's actually done it versus someone who says, "Well, I've read how to do it." And it's like,
And that's not
so
bad. You can
it's not a bad thing. I'm
I could
just
teach
saying that
someone who
there's a
read it.
perception there.
Yeah, I could teach someone who read it how to do it, but there's sometimes this is where you get the book smart versus street smart type stuff of
Yeah.
you can do things from a book, but oftentimes the book will do things the long way because it's trying to teach you, whereas the professional or the work way or the street way is just, skipping step C, D, and E and just doing A, B, and G type stuff.
Well, that's also something is that, you can read about something plenty of times, but there's always a bit of a difference doing it in real life because, that's just real life. Like, you can read about how to perfectly solder a circuit together, but when you actually do it, yeah, there's things that can kind of go wrong. Too much solder can drip on, your hand can shake a little bit, the iron can be hotter than it is supposed to be. There's little things that you just can't ever prepare for. And like, that's that's part of kind of needing to be prepared for real life, that not everything goes your way, and especially that you're going to struggle. Like, there is no way to prepare you for every little thing. So I think the most important skill that really needs to be taught is how to think and how to improvise, because that's something that I think in high schools especially they don't teach. And again, Zed, you were in high school like a closer time period than we were in high school. Did they ever really try to promote cognitive or responsive thinking?
If they did, they spoke of it, but never actively tried to make people.
Yeah, like I wouldn't think so. You know what? Better way to put it, did they ever have a class that was just pure logic? Where you
No,
had to no, not
no,
no. Okay, I didn't think so. Like
no. This was me getting into high school because I had seen like going up through elementary and middle school, like other representations and like videos they showed of like what high school looked like. Then I got to high school and it was more of the exact same fucking thing of
Yep.
here's choice A, B, C, and D. Figure out which one's right.
Yep.
yeah, pretty much.
They make
That's
it
it.
sound so
That's literally all
grandiose,
it is.
and then when you get into it, it's the same shit.
Like they made it sound like you would actually have to start thinking a lot more, and then it's just no. Here's multiple choice for literally everything.
Yeah. And I think that's a big problem is that we really we don't ever really profess individualized or critical thinking. And like we said, now with Chat GPT, it's almost laughable that you'd even consider needing that. Like with the student saying, why do I need to learn to read? I can just have that. It's going to the point, why do I need to think? I can have the computer do it for me.
And I
And
know we're gonna have boomers chiming in, but I'll just cut them off now because they made the same argument about us with graphing calculators. The difference is graphing calculators, we still kind of had to learn how to do cosine, sine, and tangent all
okay,
on
as a
paper.
person,
Hmm.
okay, I know you probably used them in college, but I think I probably used a graphing calculator far more than you because, like, I'm not gonna lie, graphing calculator was at my constant side for 3 of my years in college. Was
Oh, I
that
started using
more?
it in high school.
Well, no, I used it in high school too, but in college, like that graphic calculator was
Oh
like
yeah,
glued
calculus.
to my for like 3 years in total. Like I could not be without it. And like that's the thing though, even with the graphing calculator, you still had to know what you were doing. You
Yes.
had to know exactly how to plug in the equation and you had to know what you were plugging in. And because especially with the classes I took, you got credit for showing your work. You couldn't just do that because like that's the thing. One little mistake, the whole equation is
Oh,
wrong.
it goes. It's a nightmare. It's such a nightmare when you make one little mistake or you forget to carry a number, and you've been doing who knows how many different integrals, integration of something, and it's like you miss one thing or you miss a decimal point or something, and the whole value is completely skewed now.
Oh, tell me about that. I screwed up an entire test once because the each answer was built off the next one. It was 10 questions and like each one was built off the first one. So you answer the first one, you need the first answer to get the second one and
Yep.
so on. The first one I screwed up and missed a minus sign. So all my answers were the exact opposite sign of what they were supposed to be.
Well,
It's like, "Oh, you've got to be." They were all correct, but they were the wrong sign.
and I guess
And
to
I'm like,
kind of circumvent back to it, in high school, we was allowed to use graphing calculator, and the problem with that is because graphing calculators had a lot of technology to them, we could program in formulas. We could program essentially notes into our graphing calculators, and
"Yeah, you
that
definitely could."
that could be easily used to cheat, which we easily did half the time. And while that is bad, that we still had to actually we still had to do some review. Like, yeah, it did probably destroy some of our learning for having to memorize formulas. But then is a whole nother thing from using something so you can remember what the formula is, or you can, see what the formula is, versus using something that's going to not only give you the answer, give you the formula, it's going to give you the steps. It's removing every step of problem solving from beginning to end. It gives you the answer, it gives you the steps. There's no thought process of how it got from A to B. And even though you can look at the work and see, okay, it's correct, you won't know it because you haven't gone through the steps yourself. And
Yeah.
it's that level of kind of, in a way, I think it's kind of I think it's too much technology too quickly, and it's kind of where it would be nice to use it as a learning tool. Kids are using it as a crutch.
Yeah, it becomes overly dependable. Well, not overly dependent. We become overly dependent on it. That's what I
Yeah.
meant to say. Wrong word. Um, like it's not a bad thing to have, but also like it's again going to this thing is you have to remember it's a tool and not use it as a cheat. And I think that's kind of a big thing. And that's why I think, again, you kind of need these courses of critical thinking. Because one of the biggest, I think, one of the big problem I've noticed, especially with people nowadays, is that they can't really think for themselves. They have no real critical life skills. Like, again, with the credit thing, there are people who actually believe that a credit card, they can buy all this crap on it and then they don't mind. It's like, oh no, I can go all this money into debt and it's fine. It's like, no, it's not fine. And like the problem is they never thought about it. They never thought about the fact they'd have to pay that back because in their minds it was literally just free money to them. And that's something that they were never taught. And it's like, you know, you do need to teach stuff like that.
I suppose I should also start bringing up some of the stuff they have been incorporating that I found out about, such as some schools are planning on doing away with homework.
I wish they did that because I found it so pointless after a while.
It it is a lot of busy work, but the problem is you could get away with doing away with homework. And I understand. I used to be in high school. I understand the hatred of homework. I used to, go out of my way to take study halls so I could do my homework at school so I wouldn't have to work at my house.
Yeah,
But
look,
the
as someone who hated school, I fully understand that.
but the problem is it does force you to practice the material. And
Yeah.
you can circumvent doing homework at home if they focus more on it in the classroom. But my understanding with the current teaching system is they're not doing enough of the work in class to validate the removal of homework and doing work at home.
Yeah, and plus that, like, that'd be kind of difficult because bear in mind, like, especially in our classes, we'd have one teacher and like 30 students. If you're going to do that, you've got to kind of make sure that every single student gets that. And let's be honest, like that's hard for one single person, to do for an
Yeah.
entire classroom of 30 people, especially if you've got like an hour or so for class.
It what they kind of need to do is and one of my classes in college did something similar to this where they never gave homework, but they gave classwork, and whatever you didn't do in class had to be completed at home. I think that's a fairly decent system, but again, like Alchemist say, the you gotta make sure the student knows, so you gotta teach the material at a kind of a fast pace, so you give them time to do it in class. And it can be hard to kind of there's already not enough time in the day for them to cram in enough of the material, and that's a whole nother level of material to cram into the day. And not only that, there is only one teacher per class, and I think that's another problem. Is I think there need to be teaching assistants for not just because they do teaching assistant in college, which is understandable. There's like 60 to 100 people per classroom in some of these college classes, so that's understandable. But I think they need to do it for regular high school classes where they need to have teaching assistants, so that way um, the teacher can, if someone needs specific attention, they can kind of get it. But then again, classroom have got very unruly as well. I mean, I think we've all seen at least one TikTok or YouTube video of an out of control classroom getting really unsightly.
Right. And like, especially a lot of teachers just
TikTok, I've been
crashing out.
in those classrooms before.
Jeez, okay, there we go. I mean, I was one of those classrooms before.
Do you have any idea the number of times I was in the class that the teacher said that was the worst class they deal with all day?
Zed, my grade was regarded as the worst grade of the school.
Yeah, there you go.
I know exactly what this feels like. Now again,
Yeah.
we say we were framed, but that's a whole nother story for another day.
Oh, it's extra great for me because I just sat there and I'm like, I just want to deal with this and get done with it. I don't.
Well, actually, you guys bring up a really good point that I think does like kind of hint at one of the big major problems, the unruliness and everything is the stem of it is that, even if you had more teacher, like let's say if you had a teacher assistant, you could afford a teacher assistant for every single student to help them make sure they get it. It's not going to matter if the student actively does not care about learning the material.
Yes.
And that's also a big problem is that, especially nowadays, is that more and more students just don't care about learning. They're fine with being called stupid or being considered stupid. In fact, and that's the thing is that instead of, saying, hey, you're stupid, we're actually saying, no, you can't call them that. You have to be nice. And it's like, no, it's pretty bad. Like, it is a bad thing. It's not a good thing that our reading, our ability, like, I think our reading comprehension thing for the country is like less than 40%.
Yeah.
That's bad.
No, it's there's a huge when I went to school, and I think at this point, yeah, they all know that we're from the state of Texas. Texas
Yeah.
had like a huge program on a I think they call it was it the Blue Bonnet program, I believe.
I don't remember.
I think that's what it was called, where basically it was a program specifically encouraging people to read. Where they would, allot books, and if you read books, you could get prizes, or you can get put into academic programs and things like that. And, it's like, yeah, that was kind of, most of the time people thought it was nerdy, but I mean, at least the state was encouraging
Trying.
us to try to read and try to, have more reading comprehension. It, it's like nowadays what I've hearing from teachers from YouTube and TikTok and YouTube shorts is that they're being encouraged to take snippets from text from like books and just cover those snippets. Where in the past we would read whole chapters, and then when for homework assignment, and then when we would come into the classroom, we would have to, be able to answer questions or hold a discussion about the chapters. Now it seems like they're just being forced to read snippets from, like, maybe a paragraph from, books, and then they're going over that, which you're missing. Besides the fact that you could be missing context, subtext, the whole background for characters, you're not doing any reading at that point.
Yeah, which I guess kind of goes into something I've heard when people are discussing kind of this problem is the more, cold people who, don't care about feelings or anything else, actually say that one of the big problems is the no child left behind rule, saying that, sometimes these children need to be left behind because they just can't take it, which I get why people don't like that. And, it sounds bad, but maybe there is a point to that. I'm not saying that like, kids should be just left on the wayside if they can't perform well, but maybe there does need to be more consequences or like, I'm not sure.
So
'Cause-
Archimage, I'll be the bad guy and I'll say it. Some kids are made to go. Some kids are made to go to college. Other kids are made to turn big rocks into little rocks.
I mean, yeah, no, that's factual.
I'll say it. I'll say it right there. I'll be the mean one. I'll be the one everyone hate and say, not my angel. Nuh-uh. Your angel's gonna go to the mine. It's just, they yearn for the mines. They're gonna play real life Minecraft for the rest of their life.
I mean, yeah, no. Well, that's also a big thing. Let's went on to my original point is, not everybody's going to be a CEO. Not everybody's going to be a tech designer. Some people, yeah, you're going to need a menial job, a blue collar job. And that's how it is.
Well, the other thing that I want to get is, since we were talking about this, let's all be honest. Because since me and Zed have been in bad classes before, and Archimage, I know you also been to bad classes as well. In those classes where they say it's unruly, admit it, there's just probably one, maybe two, possibly even three students.
Oh yeah, it's never the entire class. It's a few of the loudmouths, and then just by proxy, it's everybody else.
It's the 1% of the classroom population is the troublemaker. If you get rid of that 1%, everything goes up by like 90% at that point.
Look, I'm not going to lie. In one of my classes, I think it was in the 3rd grade, it was this one little schmuck who always caused it. And, he disrupted the class and everything else. For a few days then, he got sick and he was out of class. We had the most productive couple of days in school because he wasn't there. Like, no, it is. And, like, that's the problem is that, yeah, like that. Again, that's kind of the point is that some of these kids, like, maybe they need to be left behind. Maybe they definitely need to, or again, maybe it's mean to say, but maybe we have to start telling people like, yeah, if you can't do this, you really can't cut it. And like, well, as you said,
I
it's
think
harsh,
more so
but...
that I don't necessarily, of course you,
Of course.
Look, some people need to.
I don't necessarily think leave them behind, but if they're just not going to get it, leave them where they are.
Well, okay, so I think maybe we need a little nuance to this is whether or not they're trying. Because let's be honest, like some of them don't care. Don't care to the point where, leaving them behind is almost their choice. But if they're actively trying, if they're actively putting in effort, well, then I guess this goes back to just leaving behind because the ones who are the ones that you probably should leave behind are the ones who are not trying and don't care. So
right, if someone's trying and just somehow they're not getting it, then you just need to figure out how to make them get
but
it.
not
Yeah, when you think
trying
about it, that's kind of rare.
and being a disruption to the class
Yeah.
is two different things at that point.
Now, yes, I do think that the people who are actively causing problems need to be told, okay, if you want to keep doing this, you can go down and get a job as a rodeo clown instead of being here.
Or,
Because
get out and like oh dear God, are we kind of like going all right, I don't is the path we're going down like originally topical about separating the good kids from the bad kids? Because that
Yes.
could go yeah, that could go a lot. Because especially with Shadow Art Fox's various images, that could go into a very weird statement.
Oh, I'm already trying. I'm already got the robots in the field thinking, trying to think of ways to get around the guardrails of leaving these kids behind. No, but I guess let me kind of put in one thing that I am kind of tired of is I'm tired of, and this was something I saw a lot in school because this was a big problem at my school where we only had like maybe 1% of the classroom is bad and the other 99% of the classroom is average to good. And I don't mean just education level. I mean both in behavior and education. Where go figure, the kids who misbehaved were also the one who was failing the class or who was struggling in the class. And I think one thing that always haunted me was it was so unfair that the rest of the class has to completely slow down and wait for the one person who's being a disruption to the whole class to catch up.
Yeah.
Or not even just to catch up, to shut up so we can. And there would be times where I remember the one class clown or screw up would be making jokes and everybody else would tell them to shut the hell up. Because if the teacher made it very clear, if I don't finish, going over the material, this is nothing but homework. This is extra homework for you. And guess what? I had extra homework that night. Because they wouldn't shut up. Despite the whole class telling them to shut up. And I do think that's unfair to, and I mean I can make this into a whole debate about how society is constantly putting guardrails and making
We're coddling people.
Well, they're coddling the 1% as if it's the majority, whereas the vast 99% is on board with everything, and you're setting all of these rules and guidelines and regulation for that 1%.
Which is essentially the whole point of the No Child Left Behind thing to what, that was my original kind of premise. And, maybe there's a point to that. Maybe sometimes, like, you do need to leave them behind until they choose to actually want to get caught up. Because I'm not going to lie, in school, the fear of being left behind a grade, especially how much that would piss off my parents, that got my ass in gear a lot. Because, like, I didn't like school because, well, I was a bad test taker. For one thing. So, but I worked a lot harder and studied a lot harder because I always did fear being left behind. But also bear in mind, I'm slightly paranoid. So, grain of salt. But still, my point is, like, having that fear, having that possibility did make me work harder and did make me focus. And I think that's the thing is that, a lot of these people with the No Left Behind things, they're just passing these students. What reason do they have to really keep working if they're just going to be passed anyway?
And then not only that is the other thing to kind of bring up a little bit. I'm kind of losing my trailer. Oh, this is also mean and joking and not joking. We need to bring back the dunce cap.
I was actually about to mention that.
We need to bring back the dunce cap. But dunce is kind of too big of a word for a lot of kids, so I think we just need to call it the dumbass cap. And put dumbass on there and just stick that on their head. Okay,
I was just gonna say Dumbo, but all right.
No, I'm gonna go the full mile. They need to know that they're screwing up. They need to know that they're screwing up, and that we're going to poke fun at that. We need to bring back bullying, and we need to bully the people who are the 1% into being the other 99%.
I mean, as someone who was bullied, I hate to agree with that, but yeah, we kind of do. Like, again, as someone who was bullied, it hurts my heart to say that, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of true. And, we do keep catering to this, and like, it's getting bad to the point where the 1% are basically dragging down everybody. And the 1%, like, if that's the thing though, if they're not encouraged to work, and if there's no consequences to it, why would they ever change? Why are they ever going to do it? Like, you guys have known people who just like to cut up. If they aren't punished, will they ever stop?
No.
Zed?
No.
No, of course not. Why would they? So,
No,
I guess,
that's the same logic like how you talked about the whole like maybe bullying needs to be brought back. My counter to that for people being bullied, do you have any idea how many bullies will stop if you just go up to their face and say, "What are you actually going to do to me?"
Yeah.
yeah,
They're not going to do shit.
yeah, no. Or you punch them in the face. Either one.
Oh yeah, or you hit them once and they give up completely.
But that is actually a good thing, because it teaches you to stand up. It teaches you to fend for yourself, and it teaches you to solve your own problems. Like, it is actually a good thing, and most of all, it teaches you to grow a backbone. And that's a big problem, like, especially with all these students who, like, you'll notice the people who are in this percentage who aren't able to read, like, they don't care.
No.
There is no concern about their future or anything else. And it's like, you got to get to the point, well, if you don't care, why should I? I mean, it's cruel, but, it's true.
Like I say, bring back the dunce cap. Well, I got the image right there. You just put them in the back and sit down and shut up. Let's get to.
Yeah, they brought that around because they thought smacking them with a switch was too extreme.
Look, I was raised on the Switch. We need to bring that. We need to bring back. You know what? That taught me a valuable lesson about aerodynamic. Because I think, I break the small one off. I'm being smart. That's not gonna hurt that much. It's smaller. But then I learned very quickly about aerodynamic and wind resistance, and I learned that's a stupid mistake. And you know what? It stayed with me my whole life. When I got to that part in physics, I learned that thing quickly. It's like, I know all about this. This makes perfect sense. Wind resistance. I got this.
Oh God, you chose the smaller one? Are you crazy?
Yep. And you know what? I learned. I did good leering that day. I leered very well that day.
That's like the choice between a paddle or a switch. You choose the switch because it's thinner, and you're like, that'll hurt less. Like, no.
And for the kids who don't understand that, back in the day, if you had older folks, parents or grandparents raise you, or you went to a very old-fashioned school, they would have you go outside until you break off a switch, which would break off a tree branch. And wherever tree branch you bring me, that's what I'm gonna hit you with, essentially as spanking. And most kids get the big brain idea of breaking the small one off because they figure it won't hurt as much, but they don't understand the concept of wind resistance.
Right.
Yeah, but you know what? I did good leering that day. I understand. Look, sometimes bad things gotta happen for people to learn a lesson. Because, take for example me. Take for example, don't touch it because it's hot. Well, you know what? They're probably gonna touch it one time and they're gonna burn themselves. And guess what? They're gonna learn not to do it again.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, that's kind of my thing with, like, gentle parenting. We talk about, you shouldn't spank your kids and all that. Like, look, it depends on the kid. Like, some kids, you can tell them, look, don't do that. It's wrong. And they'll get it. They won't do it. But other kids, I'm sorry, you got to smack them upside the head, get through their thick skull. That's just how it is. I think was kind of my overall point, especially with high schools, is that everyone's different. And but there are some basic skills that we all need to learn. We all have different values and different wants. Like, you know, the Johnny's not going to want the same thing that Timmy wants, and Timmy's not going to want the same thing Susan wants. So that's where we've got to kind of have this idea of how to best fit for, I guess, for them to kind of at least have the skills so that they can figure out what their life is going to become. And that's what high school should really be, so that you're prepared whether you choose to go to college or don't go to college. Whatever choice you make, you have the life skills to be able to take care of yourself for that. I think that was more important to what should be taught in high school.
Yeah, a life studies class would do leagues better for the vast majority of people in their senior and junior year than doing an AP class, especially when they don't know what they want to do, if they're even going to go to college, or what they want to do when they get to college. Most
Right?
people spend their first year in college doing those AP classes to try to figure out what the heck they want to do at college. And in a way, I see doing AP classes as kind of harmful, because by doing those AP classes, as soon as you get to college, you can't take those classes because you've already done them. Well, you can take them. It's just a waste of money and time at that point. So you're going to have to take core classes. And by core classes, I mean classes specific to your major. But if you don't know what your major is to be, then you got to take like biology 2, or calculus 2, or history 2, world history 2, or English 2, which is going to be a dramatically harder experience. You're going to have a higher, because they're going to be expecting a higher level of education from you, a higher standard of self-discipline that you probably won't have coming from high school straight into college.
Right.
So it's,
Yeah, again, like that's kind of where I'm going with, like, we need something that, like, I think proper high school, if it was going to be really looked at, would need something that can teach everybody the basics of life, but also kind of prepare people for what they might want to do with life. Because there are some people who know from a young age what they want to do with their lives, what they want to go into. And yeah, that can change sometimes, but there's some people who can pursue that and really go into it. And then there's others who aren't sure and want to kind of figure things out and work it out. And I think high school should be able to really help you for whatever choice you make, whether you decide to go to college immediately, or if you decide not to go, or if you decide to go into a workforce, and be able to help you, kind of figure out. And in short, I think high school in itself needs to be able to prepare you for either getting a job quickly and being it should prepare you for self-sufficiency, whether you go into the workforce or you go into college. I think that's what high school should be, and how we should really be looking at it for any types of reforms. What do you two think?
No, it should be, and also they really need to stop perpetuating the idea of go to college.
Yeah,
yes.
no, I completely
100%
agree.
Because
with that.
literally, in my high school, that was all it was, is they kept saying, no, go to college, go to college, go
too.
to college. And I'm like,
Mine too.
okay, great. Where the hell is the money for that?
Nowhere. From your pocket.
Nowhere. It's like, I don't have the money to do that. And I don't necessarily like having debt.
And it's time for my little conspiracy theory of the podcast. Part of me think that the reason they don't want to put in a life study basic financial class in senior year of high school or junior year is because they want you to not know, about credit, interest rate, um and then go into college, take out a loan, not know how interest rate work, not know how credit work, and then just get yourself in debt. So you gotta keep doing. So you just gotta keep going through that system. Paul may think it's a big racket now.
It probably is. Like, I'm not gonna lie, because like that's the thing. Like, any bit of advice I've ever given to people is like, you should try to work through college to get up some of that experience, but also to kind of help pay that debt. Because I feel like if you're gonna do a scholarship, there should be like if you're gonna do a scholarship, there should be some kind of like workforce and tribute to it, where there's an internship or something that's part of it, to where the wages kind of go to paying off your student debt. Because let's be honest, those student debts, like they can get into like outrageous amounts of money that's like can take people decades to pay off. And I never had any student debts, but I've known people who've had them, and like it took a long time to pay off just because of the sheer amount. And then that's if they don't waste them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be honest. There's people who like see that money and they, they'll do what people who've never had money do when they get a whole bunch of money. They spend it on useless crap. And that's kind of the danger. Like again, that's again part of the whole. You need to be able to teach people financial literacy. Is that an actual word, financial literacy? Is that a thing, or did I make that up?
We're making it a thing.
I don't know that that's necessarily a thing.
Like, is that a
like in
term?
terms of that's what people use to say it.
We can look it up.
But it definitely is a thing that needs to
no,
exist.
financial literacy is a term. Okay, I was
it
right.
is.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Totally.
I've never heard the term, so
The ability
Okay.
to understand and effectively use various financial skills.
Okay, yeah, no, it's a
yeah,
term.
no.
Okay.
More good leering today.
stop.
Okay, don't worry. I think it's time because I think otherwise we're gonna make this too long of a part if we keep going. But I think we got like a good foundation.
No, I think that's a good starting point, and addresses some of the problems of high school. And next time we can dive into the fun stuff and look at colleges. That's gonna be fun, and we're gonna realize that when Shadow R Fox and I talk, that Zed was probably smarter than all of us.
Oh my goodness, but and and we'll revisit the subject more of how they can improve school in general. But I think this was just a good talking point for junior and senior year of high school in particular.
Yeah. And what to kind of look into. I would agree with that.
And of course, we gave you guys some good leanings today.
He'll never be done with this shit.
I wouldn't make this many jokes if multiple school names spell it this way.
The sad thing is, it's completely correct. The satire works. Like, it's perfect satire for it.
Any closing thoughts before we close out the video?
We leered it good.
There we go. Zed, anything to add?